A decision is the right decision. I'm the first one to say that I did something wrong. Shit, I blew that one. Oh, I should have, whatever. Or we got to manipulate something I made, whatever it might be. But in the moment, just make a decision. You can, if you are an indecisive human being, you should not be a wedding producer.
Wendy, my first memory of you, I got dropped off in the middle of a giant ranch after a 15-mile dusty ride. And I remember seeing you standing, this small woman standing on a dirt road in a black dress and cowboy boots. I think they were cowboy boots. And just like owning the space, like telling people, you go there, look at it, you do this. I was like, who is this person that I'm working with? And this was on Ralph Lauren's ranch, and it was our first wedding we ever worked together. And I remember just that first moment being impressed by your command of an event and of the people around you.
Well, we sort of grew up together, you and I, James.
A little bit.
So, yeah. I don't know really where that comes from, that small command. It's like a little Mighty Mouse moment that, has shifted through the years, quite frankly. I think a lot of that kind of command at the time came from pure fear.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But it's a definite thing you have though, Wendy, because like we'll come into town and you're Wendy and it's just friendly and it's windy and it's light. And then ceremony, when we pull up 10 time, there's another mode, Wendy. Until you switch your shoes at like 10 o'clock into the sneakers, it's just like, no bullshit, Wendy.
Yeah, I do have a little bit of an intensity about me, but I think that people appreciate clear direction. I try to do it all with a lot of love.
Yes, you do.
Like I think like I like to say I love you, and then I ask you to do something for me. That's kind of my MO a bit.
Yes, a classic abusive relationship. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's very passive. But it isn't. It's not, because the love is actually true in there. It's what I mean. Like,
totally.
Not throwing it out there just to make you do things, but it's like, I love you, and now we really need to do this thing, and we need to do this thing for this next amount of time. And then the true love is going to come back when we're incredibly successful and we can jump up and down and have a good time, because we are.
Until then, I love you and do what I want.
I love you. I love you. Please.
And so for anyone who's watching this or listening and doesn't know, this is Wendy Jacobs Hampton, owner of Soirée Telluride, planner to the stars, literally, out of Telluride, Colorado. Can you... First thing, how the hell did you end up in Telluride? I know you're not from there. How did you end up in Telluride?
No, I'm from New York originally. I'm actually most people find Telluride because they ski bum and they find their way. I was fortunate to have ski bum parents. So I am pretty old school Telluride in the sense that my folks bought a place here in 1982. Wow. Before Telluride was really on the map in any way, shape, or form. And we started coming here when I was a kid. And I think, what differs me from many wedding planners in the industry is that skiing kind of comes first for me. I have made all of my life decisions based on the sport of skiing my entire life. And so I was fortunate enough to come to Telluride as a kid. I was a ski racer. I went to college in Colorado. So that was when I really moved to the West. And the minute I took off my cap and gown, I moved to Telluride. Yeah. And lived in a cabin with a bunch of people and skied. But when we talk about ski bumming really is like a lifestyle where you're not working very hard and it's all recreation based and your focus is slowly. I was a little different in the sense that within that I always had a job. I was a working person. I was a fairly motivated ski bum, unlike a lot of my roommates. So that's sort of my initial time in Telluride. So, when people, it's a very territorialistic town, and there's all sorts of like, are you local? Are you not local? I take the local thing pretty seriously, the community thing pretty seriously. I would absolutely call myself a local. My children are true locals, born and bred here. But yeah, so that's how I got here.
Yeah,
through skiing. I like it.
Through skiing.
Highly successful ski bum. Yeah.
It's a place that people come to hide out. There's a lot of rebels and renegades that have come through this valley, you know. It is
since the 1800s, right?
It is a hideaway destination, you know. There's like a lot of that stuff exists here. But there was obviously a long stretch between me coming here at 21 full time and then starting the company. I don't know how many years later. I mean, maybe I was like 28. So I had a stretch of time in there.
So how did you get to weddings then?
So,
from skiing, from college to skiing to weddings.
So my first career, I was an outdoor educator, and I worked with kids in the backcountry. I was a ski instructor, ran the race department, and then I worked with kids in the backcountry with an organization called the Telluride Academy, which is a nonprofit, a thriving nonprofit still in town that brings kids into the outdoors. And I worked my way up into that nonprofit where I became the program director. And since it was a nonprofit, I was running all the fundraising. And the fundraising we were not small events. Like we would do a New Year's casino night for 300 people, and we had to raise all of this money. And, you know, I mean, I think even going back a bit, like my background is beyond growing up in a ski family. I grew up in a party family, and I grew up in a family where my parents threw ragers, and like they were not small, you know, they were like 70s New York. So when like they would have an Oktoberfest and it would be tented and it would be 500 people and activities and football with t-shirt, like I grew up in that environment.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So my whole childhood, you know, there were always people, there was always a party. And it was a fun space to work in. So I was really great at throwing parties. High school, college, like I threw annual large events my whole life. And I would write schedules and do invitations, you know, like it just was sort of like in my DNA a bit. So cut to working at the Telluride Academy, running their nonprofits. And a lot of people don't know how the company started. Like I did not wake up one morning and say, I want to be a wedding planner.
Tell us.
I had a friend, you know, again, in 1999, Telluride. So 1999. So that means this is my 25th season as a wedding planner in some capacity, which is probably, you should make me a video or something. You know?
There should be like confetti comes out right at this point.
Yeah, right. So I actually had a friend that started a little wedding planning business, and it was called Soirée Exquisite Events. And I was like 27, and I said, hey, I'd love to help you. And it's funny because it's a local couple that I still know. And, they had this very small wedding, and I was like tying bows on chairs, you know, and after the wedding, it was her first one. And after the wedding, I said, hey, that was so fun. I loved that. If you ever need help, I would love to help you again. And she said, I hated it. Do you want to buy it? And I said, well, what does that mean? You know? And she said, for $2,000, I will sell you Soirée Exquisite Events. And I have one client on the books for next summer. And I remember, like, first of all, $2,000 at the time for me was like an enormous amount of money. I was like, how am I going to come up with $2,000? Yeah. And pretty much it was like I bought a box that had a business license, a contract, a one-page website, and a client. And I was kind of going to make $2,000 on that client. That I was like, okay, so herein lies the moment. Take the risk. Try to do something. And if you don't like it, you're flush. You walk away. It's an experience, right?
Right.
Well, it turns out that first wedding I ever did in the summer of 2000 was 250 people, and it was tented off-site on a piece of property for ceremony and cocktails. And then we moved to a restaurant in Telluride that had a patio that was also tented. So I did not really know what I was doing. And I truly, when I say I faked it till I maked it, like I was like watching TV shows to see what side the bride stood on. You know, I remember getting out of the van and everybody looking at me and realizing at that moment that I was supposed to be in charge of running the ceremony rehearsal. Oh, yeah. Like I was like, oh, okay, all right. Everybody line up, you know.
There's Wendy,
and I can't say where that comes from, where the confidence comes to jump in and just realize, like in that moment, you know, that the time there's no college degree in wedding planning. I mean, I think there is now, but at the time there's no. You know, it was, and I believe in experiential education, outdoor education with kids and working and all of that, planning and logistics that went into my first career can very much be carried over into this. And it's the best way to learn. And if you greet with confidence, I mean, if you walk into any room and make people think you're supposed to be there, no questions will be asked.
I love that.
So that was how I started this Soirée Exquisite Events, which is funny. My father when he calls me, he's like, "Hey, Exquisite, it's your dad." I mean, we've been making fun of that name forever. So, so that was the first one. And that was in 2000. And, you know, I think at some point I changed the name to Soirée Telluride. And I had other jobs. I mean, Telluride is very much a place where everybody has 3 jobs. Like, you ski, then you do this job, then you're slinging coffee, then you're a bartender. You know, it's the nature of this environment. So I still was working. I think I worked at the bookstore. I still worked at the Telluride Academy. You know, you had to try to work it.
Diversify that income.
Yeah. And then, you know, as the summers, I think 2001, maybe I had 3 clients. And, you know, since it's project-based, you can do other things during that time. So that's it's the start of the soiree. It's the beginning of it all.
I love that story. I've never heard that story.
The person I bought it from lives in Telluride. I see her all the time. She wears my soiree hat. She's so proud of me. You know, she's like, I'm like, well, you started all. She's like, no. Like, I started an idea. You created it to be what it is. I just wonder, though, if at 26, 27 years old, if I would have had the guts on my own. I don't know if I would have. So I do credit her with, you know, having the initial idea. There weren't any wedding planners in Telluride then.
Yeah.
Nothing was happening.
It's so interesting to hear the backstory because it adds up, right? Because I can see your personality, and now hearing the background, you grew up in parties. I can see both of those things. Like, that's you. There's this natural, like James said, this little person that's like, bossy, like, who's this? You know, it's that tenacity. It's that wild, like, unhindered, free, open, no fences, Wendy, get it done. And then you grew up in parties. So you actually, it's your natural environment. Yeah.
It's absolutely, I'm flying through. And I was also a deadhead. I was like on Dead Tour. Totally. I mean, like, I grew up in like a festival, a party, you know, with a parent my mom was at Studio 54 in the late 70s, you know, I grew up in that environment. So
Wendy,
that's very natural for me.
I have so much appreciation for that. Like your life, I look at it like that. In my own life, you're like, isn't it cool how you've designed this exactly the way you want it to be? If you think about you know what I mean? Like, it's pretty damn cool. You're like a successful ski bum / party goer / like, you've upgraded everything that you love. You just upgrade it, and now you're in. It's great. That's really cool.
I mean, it's true. It's party girl throwing parties. I'm still a partier. You know, I'm 51. I'm still not like. I don't think it has to end. I'll dance on a table if you put one in front of me. Like it's. You know, you've got to love that side of it. I mean, I think that. I mean, obviously, there's so much that goes into all of these things. I think that's actually a great miss a lot of the times in our industry is I think people forget the fun part. Like that we are planning the most important day for many people at that phase of their life. Yeah. And and I take the ceremonies seriously. Like I am not the wedding planner that says, let's just do 15 minutes and then we roll in and it's all about the party. Like I care about my clients, and I take that piece. And that's why you feel that intensity from me 30 minutes before the ceremony. Because it is an imperative piece to the night.
Yeah.
But once that shit is done, like let's pour some freaking tequila and have some fun, celebrate the beauty of what this is all about, and like loosen up a little bit. And it's supposed to be a great time. Now, granted, I don't want my staff on the dance floor. Like I've dealt with that before. And like, you know, nobody's allowed to like doing drugs in like the ice cooler, but like, you know, there's a certain amount of professionalism and respect that goes into these expensive days. But like, I do also want to create an environment. Like, I think like, you know, and James, like we've had ones that were less fun, you know, and you can feel it the whole night, you know, I mean, but generally I hope that I put out like an environment for the vendors that, you know, we loosen up and we have a good time through the night, because then everybody does a better job.
Yeah.
You know,
but you're a perfect example for me of that, because people ask us what makes an amazing planner. And I'll say the best ones are natural hosts. And that's you. I remember the first time with you, like you bring us food, you're serving us. I'm like, but we're just working under you really. And you're like, you're serving us your dinner. Are you okay? What do you need? Like naturally, effortlessly. That's you. The teams that work around you feel like that. It's all a reflection of that. Now you're the real deal, Wendy.
Oh, well, thank you. I don't feel like the real deal. You know, I'm always like hiding out in this little valley. And the only time I ever hear that I'm the real deal is when different vendors that actually work with the real deals tell me, you know, because I don't go to any of this stuff. I mean, we talk about that. Like, you know, this of me, like, I don't go to any of this industry stuff. I like, don't know that anyone would know who I am, but then I find out like, oh, they do. I really care about the people that work with me. I'm proud of my job. And I'm very proud of my company and what's been created. Not for a second do I believe that I could have done any of this without any of you. Like, and anybody that believes that. So like, I care very much. I mean, like when I say I love you, I do to the pit of my soul. And I care that the people that are working there are having an enjoyable experience, you know? You need to be fed a great meal so that then the product, you can do your job. You can.
Yeah, but that's those little differences again within the context of luxury. That's why you're one of the best. Because of that mindset. It's not just photographer, do your job, I'll do mine. It's like, no, taking care, hosting, like, and that's all the way through. Your clients feel that, you know? That's why you are who you are.
Thank you for saying that. I do make that a big priority, you know, it's funny that you say that, because I actually have even shifted towards gratitude more as the years have gone on. Like when I think back to the Ralph Lauren wedding, it was so intense. There was so many layers of intensity, because we call it the Ralph Lauren wedding, but like there's this whole other element where there were presidents on site. And anytime you put a former president on a site, I had no idea what I was getting into. Nobody really did. The Secret Service didn't even really know, because things shifted days before that were like bonkers of what we had to pull off. But I have a moment that like sometimes keeps me up at night. Like obviously one of the things that we had to do was we had to take everybody's phones, and nobody could take any photos. And, you know, and it's a difficult thing. Even that long ago, just like, so the communication was like sat phones and radios. And I remember somebody was taking pictures, and we had built these like leather, barn doors. And, you know, when I say leather barn doors, and this was actually, they were in front of the bathroom. Well, imagine the most beautiful leather barn doors you've ever seen in your life. It's Ralph Lauren, but these are the bathroom doors, right? And someone had told me that someone was taking pictures, and I remember like slamming open the barn doors. Who's fucking taking pictures? Like, losing my skull, you know? And like that actual moment like keeps me up at night, because like that's the antithesis of who I want to be as a planner. And I do not want to be the chick running around as an asshole Napoleonic, ego-based person. I am not looking to create that crazy environment. And that was very much based in less experience,
yeah, totally.
We did that wedding and we did a spectacular job, and we can talk about it. And it is the most prideful work of my career still to date. But if someone really looked at my resume getting that job, and I can talk about how I got that job, but there was many event producers in the world that were more qualified for that job than I was at the time. And so there were moments where I lost my cool. Also, I remember 4 days before, having a full panic attack at 4 o'clock in the morning, I can't do this, and having it's an intense job, as the years have gone on. And the last thing I ever want, especially in a small town like Telluride, is people think I'm a bitch.
Yeah.
Or an asshole. And, the whole women and being called a bitch when you're a strong business owner, that's a whole other conversation. But I don't want people to think that of me in a work environment. And so I've actually very consciously shifted, especially since COVID, in leading with a lot of gratitude.
Yeah.
And starting it off with a thank you. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you so much for doing this with us today. Yeah. I know it's a lot of work. It's going to be a long day. We're all in this together. Let me know what you need to make this a smoother process for you. How can you feel supported?
Yeah.
So that it goes off so much better, because, especially since the pandemic, it's hard to find everybody, workers and everything. And and I am also the planner that I will clean the bathroom. I will pick up the elk poop. There is no job that I'm not willing not to do to show people this is a team environment. And I'm not better than anybody else on here. I'm just the person managing,
And again, you reflect all of that. But that you gotta earn that over many years. That's a skill you've developed, right? Like you said, you failed plenty, but that's over years. I'm happy to say it's true of you. It really is.
I do want to ask you how you got the Ralph Lauren job, but I want to go even further back.
Okay.
As a lead up to that. So for somebody who's listening to this or watching this, that's 27, 28 and just getting started. And they're like, man, I really want to end up where Wendy's at. Mm-hmm. And they're in the middle of nowhere, let's say, right? In a small town somewhere. How did you go from buying a company from $2,000, not knowing what the heck you were doing at all, to 12 years later, planning a wedding for Ralph Lauren and the Bush family? Was that an intentional direction, an intentional decision on your part? I'm going to go after luxury weddings, or is that a function of being in Telluride, or something in between?
Yeah. So the luxury wedding industry was definitely different then. So I don't think I was sitting down going, I want to go after it, but I'm driven as fuck.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
And I have always I was always striving for success. So I don't want anybody to have these jobs in my town. I'll be clear in saying that.
I love that about you. I love it. I love it.
And to me, that's just being driven and wanting success for my company.
Yeah.
I want to credit actually one person though that taught me how to really do a tent, and this is a good one. I was planning weddings from 2000 to 2005, but I got engaged in 2004, whatever, and I did not have a small wedding, my own wedding, to Zach, my lovely husband, and I got married in New York, and I hired Jess Gordon to plan my wedding. And which, if Jess and myself, there's a lot of similarities between who we are as people, because I did interview some other people to help me plan my own wedding, because what I knew as a wedding planner was I need a wedding planner.
Yeah.
I'm having a big wedding. I
can't do it all on my own.
Our role is important, right? So I was interviewing some different people in New York, and like everybody was like really proper and preppy, and like that is not who I am. It is a little bit of the environment that I was brought up in, but it is absolutely. So when I met Jess, I was like, this is my chick,
this is
right?
not that. Yeah.
She is like my person. I had a tented wedding. Like, who teaches you how to put a floor in a tent? Who teaches you how to do this stuff? Now there's Engage. Now there's all these industry events. There's ways to learn. Now there's like the internet. There's ways to figure this stuff out. In 1999, there were not ways to figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
So I had a tented wedding in my backyard in New York with a floor, the whole bit. I watched the whole thing go, and she's well aware, you know, and I learned a lot from my own wedding. Not everybody gets to have that story. And I say that with knowing how fortunate I am to be able to have a wedding like that. But in 2006, the year after my wedding, I did my first large scale tented wedding. And I knew what I was doing. So, you know, it's weird how the universe works and shit falls in your lap. And, you know, I did not hire Jess Gordon at the time thinking that it was going to be like my own mini college course in event planning. But it was. I learned how to tend a tennis court, you know, and like I learned how to do this stuff, you know. And so I will say, though, that like when you're talking about kids starting in this industry, first of all, in the beginning, you take everything you could get. I did everything. I did like real estate open houses. I did a breakfast for, you know, I don't know, the PTA. Like there's nothing there in the beginning. There wasn't, it's not just weddings all the time. I mean, you know, this podcast is based in luxury weddings, but I do a lot of private events, and, you know, a lot of people go the corporate route. Corporate for me is soul sucking. It's not my jam. I like private stuff. I like parties, you know, that was the beginning. The nature of what Telluride is as a destination also guides, you know, these level of events. Yeah. But this is actually really important. Aspen had a luxury industry back in the day. Telluride did not. And I will take credit on creating a luxury industry in Telluride, because there was always a lot of wealth here, but nobody ever saw that it could be done locally. And once we did Ralph and you know, they married, it was a Bush Lauren wedding. So it was, you know, twofold that way. Because I have a lot of Texas clients that say, oh, I heard you planned the Bush wedding, you know, remember that. Right. There's New York and there's Texas.
That's right. Two dynasties.
That wedding, you know, it has so many layers, because what it did is it actually also created a luxury industry in this community. And all of these people now that have hired me since then, because there's been a lot of big clients that have come in the last, 12 years. They looked at that and they said, oh, this can be done, and this can be done here, and this can be done with Wendy. And they all talk to each other, you know, like, you know, Ralph Lauren spoke to Meg Whitman, then Meg Whitman hired me. Meg Whitman talked to Tom Hill, then Tom Hill hired me. Then the Tishmans, you know, it's like, they, you know, they have their own small billionaire roundtable. Yeah. And everybody is in their own Rolodex. And without a doubt, they all talk to each other. And that was part of the growth. So like, if you're trying to be a starting wedding planner in Indiana, those clients might not exist. So like, the truth is that if you're in the middle of nowhere, you have to probably go work for someone where the clientele exists. You know, there's luxury industry in pockets of our nation, and it's not Idaho. Yeah. You know, sometimes, sometimes, you know, I said Idaho because that's where James is.
I got the dig. I appreciate that.
But most of the time at those ranches, they're bringing in planners from LA and New York. And I think where we are very different here is that nobody is coming in here because we sort of created this honeypot.
Yeah, 100%.
You know,
Oh, and it's difficult, right? Like it's not easy to do what you do in Telluride.
In fact, there was somebody just here recently that bailed out, rolled up, was thinking they were going to try to do something, and was like, "It's too rough." They came in without any communication with anybody. You need to have some support here. It's not cut and dry. It's far. It's in the middle of nowhere, and it's beautiful, but it's not an easy place unless you know it.
For sure. So finish off this story. How did you get the Ralph Lauren wedding? There's got to be a good story here.
I mean, I love Lauren Bush. Like, again, like there's connection that you have with people. I take a lot of pride in trying to connect with my clients, but the truth is that Lauren called a hotel and said, "We're thinking about throwing a wedding here." And at the time, Lauren's family is the Bush family, and people know her as Lauren Bush Lauren, right? I call her LBL. That's her like late night DJ name.
Sounds like a label.
Yeah. So like the original connect was she called a hotel, like the nicest hotel in town, and said, and I don't even know if she told them who she was. It could have just been like, "Hi, my name is Lauren, and I'm thinking about throwing a wedding in the Telluride area. Do you have any suggestions of somebody that could help?" And they gave her my name. And so she called me.
Yeah.
And so the beginning of this process started, and Lauren and I connected right away. Like, we just did. And then, she told me what it all was. And I'm like, holy shit, this is a big deal. And originally I was only going to be hired by Lauren's side of the family to help with some lodging and rehearsal dinner and, some of the ancillary pieces and parts for Lauren's side. And the whole time I would just say, "But I can plan the wedding. I can do the wedding."
Yeah.
I said, at the time I was like, "Sure, I'll do anything, like crumbs, give me crumbs, like whatever piece and part you want me to do of this thing, like sign me up." But every time I'd say, "But we can do the wedding." Months. And they interviewed a lot of people, a lot of big planners at the time.
Yeah.
And I flew to New York. Finally, I flew to New York to interview with Ralph and Ricky. And, and it's all of it's really funny. Like my life was very different at that point. Like I couldn't really afford to buy the clothes, but I remember I was like, you have to wear Ralph Lauren to a job interview with Ralph Lauren. So I went and I think I bought a sweater, sunglasses, and a pair of boots and a bag. And it was like a pretty big check for me. I was like, I couldn't do a whole head to toe. So I was like, I got enough going on here that I can like walk into this meeting. And so I went into this meeting with Ralph and Ricky and in their offices in New York. And I really just I went in without Wendy confidence. Like, I don't know where it comes from. I mean, Ricky was asking me funny questions like, "Do you wear a headset?" Funny things. Yeah. And I just came in with the confidence. And I think the key to me getting that job was I said to Ralph, I said, "Listen, you could bring in whoever you want to do this job, but nobody in Telluride cares or gives a shit about any of those people. And you will not be supported in this community if you bring everything in from out of town." And Ralph and Ricky have owned this ranch outside of Telluride forever. And they care, and they're philanthropic here, and they care what the community thinks of them. And I was very clear with them that if they went local, they would have a different experience. They would have a different level of respect, open heart. People would be happy that they were doing this. And I think that they truly cared about their reputation in the town. But granted, they could have easily done it. And it's like a ranch outside of town. Like nobody really would have known what was even going on. Like a lot of the jobs we do, people don't even know that it's happening.
No idea.
But because I said, go local. People care about me. Nobody's going to pick up the phone for any of those people, but people care about me and they're going to pick up the phone for me. And I think that was the selling point for them.
Yeah.
The other thing is, and it's funny because I'm not religious at all, but like, I'm probably the only Jewish wedding planner in Western Colorado. And I am from New York. And I am them. Culturally, the Lauren family and myself and how I grew up in New York and the world that I grew up in, like it was extremely relatable for them when I sat around the table. They looked at me like a cousin,
Yeah.
We had that connection. I mean, it's difficult to connect with clients that are so different than you. But like at the end of the day, like David, Lauren, and I, we kind of grew up somewhat similar. We get it. My father said something really funny to me at the time. He was like, "So now you're a Jew?" I'm not
a Lauren Jew.
I've ever been in my entire life right now, because they had a Jewish wedding, which was a shock to the Bushes, quite frankly. So that was, and then it was months until they made their decision. And which was, time is a ticking.
Yeah.
And I will never forget that I got the call in mid-April. So mid-April, the wedding was Labor Day weekend. They called me in mid-April and told me to do that I had gotten the job.
Wow.
That is not a lot of time to plan that wedding.
Yeah.
Not back then, especially.
Yeah, not only that, but they didn't want we built every building for that wedding. So there were no tents. Ralph did not want to see one white tent as far as the eye could see. He didn't want to see a car as far as the eye could see. So in a sense, I got the job and then they gave me an architect, they gave me a builder, and they gave me the guy who does in charge of the antiquities on the ranch. This guy, Doug Billmeyer, who I don't know if you remember him, James, but like, he's
big,
like
bushy,
loony, bushy guy. Looked like a troll.
I had an experience with him.
In a pouch around his neck, like had been working for Ralph since 1972. And was like, but he was actually a really key element for me because he really made sure that like the look of everything was so specifically to Ralph. But I mean, I stood with Ralph at the property and he was like, "So where you want to build this chapel, Wendy?" He called me Wendy. Wendy put his arm around me. And I was a bullshitter. I was a total bullshit artist through the whole thing. I was like, the wind. He likes everything in a movie scene. Like everything for him is like a movie set, right? Yeah. So he loves movies, big movie guy. And so like when I learned that, I would be like, well, do you see how the wind is blowing over the hill on that pasture over there and the view? And then if we
so
bullshit, like
that's so damn good.
You just and he's like, okay, and then you do it. And then you build a, 80 by 120 foot chapel with TP canvas and logs of aspen off the wood. I mean, it's nuts, some of the stuff that we do.
Yeah.
But that was the job. I mean, again, I think it's probably just like, it's my personality. I came in, I said, yeah, do it. Don't blow it. If you don't hire me, you're going to blow it.
Where does that confidence come from? Like, is that something that I know you're saying it's part of your personality, and I think that it is. Yeah. But going into a meeting like that, like coming in, is there something that you do? Is there a process that you're like, okay, I'm going to own this in order to just be yourself and go, this is Ralph Lauren. He's just human. I'm just going to tell him.
Well, I think that's actually like really key with all of when you're working with wealth or celebrity is that everybody's just people. And so absolutely, I say that to myself. He's just a guy. He's just like another 75-year-old dad throwing a wedding for his kid, Yeah. Okay, I want to be honest about my background a little bit, and I think my background is there's a certain level of my background that inspires some of that confidence, and I spent a really long time not being really owning my personal background and being like a little embarrassed of where I'm from because I am a ski bum, and ski bums are bums. Like I was raised on the East Coast. I went to private schools. I was raised with a lot of the people that are now my clients.
You grew up wealthy is what you're saying.
Yes. And, and my dad is self-made and I'm self-made. And a lot of that drive comes from that. But I don't want that to get lost in the fact that some of that confidence comes from, it's not the first time I've been in the room with this level of people. And I say that without trying to sound obnoxious in any way, shape, or form, because
you're fine.
I truly have created, and the life that I live is based on the success that I have. Like I am not being given my life in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But I went to an all-girls finishing school for high school, and like I grew up to a degree in that environment, being around some of these New York's, like I'm like 2 degrees separation from Gwyneth Paltrow, like some of these people. So I do think that I am lucky and fortunate in I have been able to use that the life in that I'm less intimidated. Yeah. I'm less intimidated walking in the places. Now, I choose to live in Telluride. I choose this lifestyle. I do not want to live in New York. I do not want that to be my social life. I don't choose the people I surround myself at all based in wealth or their background. I am a very loving and open-minded person.
Yeah.
But I have had the good fortune of feeling less intimidated in those spaces.
And Wendy, I think that's one of the things that to me makes you so interesting and so lovable is that, like, yes, you may have grown up a certain way, but you've almost kicked against it, and it's almost like antithetical to who you are and who your heart is. And like this whole idea of a ski bum, like I can just see you like going, no, I'm just a ski bum. Like,
yeah.
But the combination of those two things make you not only super talented and very confident, but very interesting.
Yeah.
Right. To just sit and have a conversation with you and how open you are. I mean, it's one of my favorite things about the relationship we have with you, or I have with you, is like, here, I'm this conservative Christian from Idaho, and you're a Jew from New York living as a ski bum in Telluride.
Yeah.
And we can sit and have a conversation about all sorts of things.
And you're like one of the great loves of my life. I mean, I love, in a friendship sort of way, I love your wife, I love your family, but like, I love who you are as a person. I love our conversations that we get to have because of that.
Yeah. But it's that openness. It's that, I guess what I'm saying is it's just, all of that is important to who you are. Like that whole, because I could feel the emotion from you as you talk about it. Like it's such an important part of who you are.
I spent a long time pretending that wasn't who I was. I just wanted to be a dirtbag like everybody else. And I lived like one, quite frankly. I mean, I remember having some friends visit me out here and bringing them to my house where I legitimately had to stoke the fire to have heat in the cabin.
Yeah.
And my friends from high school going like, do your parents know where you live? And by the way, they did. It wasn't like, that the honesty goes all the way through the whole thing. Like but I think I was a little less authentic back in the day because I was like pretending I wanted to be like every other dirtbag ski bum.
Yeah.
The truth is I wasn't, right? Yeah. But I still had to make a certain amount of money to make my rent. Like when I talk about having multiple jobs, I also was brought up in a family where I had to work and I had to pay my bills. Like it wasn't given to me. My education was given to me. That was given to me. My lifestyle growing up was given to me, but like there was a certain point where it was adult time, but I also love living in that cabin where I had to get up at 3:00 in the morning and put a log in the fire. Like I like that as well. And because of that side of me, oftentimes in my business side, I really feel like I'm playing dress up, like I'm a big faker.
Yeah.
There's like lots of avenues of who I am, like I've never felt very posh or fancy, or I'm like, shit, my hair's not, but
looks nice today though.
That's why I love you bringing this up and saying, look, here's my past, because authentically, that is who you are. You're all of these things. You're not just one thing. You're not just ski bum. You're not just East Coast girl. You're a common, all of these things authentically. And so it's all good. I love all of it. And I can see
you use it, and you use it so well, to good effect.
Yeah, well, then I can relate to the people that I work with and work for me, and then I can relate to the clients, and I think that therein lies. So it's like a lot of me being able to get the level of clients that I'm getting is when I'm sitting down with them at the table and I'm pitching myself for the job. I am relatable to them, and I know how to carry myself correctly, with that level of people. So
that's what I'm saying.
No, we appreciate the honesty. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and to be certain you've developed the skill.
I wanted to just shift really quick because there's a lot of photographers, videographers who watch this podcast.
Okay.
Is there something that you wish more photographers did or didn't do? Is there something that you're like, oh my goodness, if they would just do this thing better, or I love it that, like, how can we make your job easier, better?
Well, it's so much about trust. And, I feel for the photographers in the industry because I get hit by a lot of photographers, right? And everybody needs to start, but you cannot help but it's always nerve-wracking to work with somebody new because you create these relationships and then you kind of know what you got. And like, it's hard. There's a lot of photographers in the industry. It does feel like a very flooded part of our industry. And like, I feel for all these people that email me or like send me a candle at Christmas, because there's relationships that do get cultivated. I think for me, I don't think of myself as a big micromanager, and I don't know, like within the event. Do you guys feel like I micromanage?
Not at all. Not a micromanager ever.
Right.
You're managing.
So I'm managing, but I'm not micromanaging. Like I would never say, well, first of all, I would never say, like, James, why don't you move her veil to the left? Like, hell no, dude, that is not my job. I will say to you, you've got 10 more minutes.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's time to move them. I would think that's like, but because I want to get them to their party, everybody believes in the moment that their job is the most important. Like, I get that. And I'm empathetic to like, you guys need to get this shot. I like working with photographers that move very quickly because when I have photographers say like, I need 90 minutes for photos. No, you don't. Because you don't.
Yes.
You just don't.
It's true.
You're going to get the shot. If you are good at your job, you're going to get the shot.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think that's this, I don't know where that comes from when people feel like they need that amount of time. Again, I think that comes from people being earlier in their career. So for me, I take a lot of time for my timelines, and I try to get it as like organized as possible. And then when the day comes, I want my photographers to have it, and I want them to know what's going on in the night. And then I also want them to roll a little bit, like,
yes, ma'am.
That, and so I think that would be a tip for me for photographers. It's like, have my shit. I spent hours on that timeline.
So good.
And it is not a template. There's template elements, but I am customizing for each event and I put energy. So a pet peeve of mine is for anybody to ask me like, what time's the cake cutting?
Yeah.
Like, don't, like, information. It's a lot of people working on the site. 50 people asked me what time first course is served. Like, so there's a reason why we have that document. I believe it sets us up for success. But then I am very much open for freedom, flexibility, and I want you guys to just do your thing. And I'm not going to get in your way. Like, I'm not. And that comes with me trusting that you guys are going to do beautiful work. So I guess, does that make sense? Does that help?
Totally. No, that's really helpful.
I think that you guys can shoot. I guess it depends. I mean, if the bridal party is monstrous, if we've got some Texas client with 20 bridesmaids or whatever, and the bride wants a picture with each of them, like, I'm not clueless. That's going to take a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Not 90 minutes.
But no, I mean, I just think, I also think, like, I want my photographers to come in with confidence. First of all, I'm not a big first look person. And I'm not, because I really love the authentic response of what it looks like when they see each other for the first time. Maybe I'm old fashioned, but
you're so old fashioned.
That's so East Coast.
I love that vibe. But there's been some beautiful first looks that have happened, like in the trees, and I like that. But my preference is doing all of I also think that, clients' shoulders drop and everybody relaxes so much after the ceremony. And I think that comes through in the images. It's stressful. Like, you're a bride, you're trying to look perfect you've ever looked. And we're trying to take these pictures and we're trying not to wreck the dress. And they're like always like robots, So my preference is they walk down the aisle, they bang out the ceremony, everybody loosens up. I'm standing there with trays of cocktails for them. The minute they're done, they get to knock back a little booze. We take some pictures. My expectation and hope from my photographer in that moment is that it's your show.
Yeah.
I'm like, take it away, boys. You got 25 minutes.
Yeah. Get it done. Yeah.
I'm going to step back. I'm going to, sometimes I walk away, I'm like, do your thing, make it happen. And I trust you in that. I trust that you can do it and you're going to crush it. And I love you. Thank you for doing that. And
you have 5 more minutes.
Sunset. Okay, let's figure it out. Sun is setting at 7:39. We're going to pull them out. Wait, what'd you say, Otto?
So you have 5 more minutes.
Yeah, you got 5 more minutes. I love you. Otto, I love you. You've got 5 more minutes. We got to get these guys to their party.
I will say that's one of the nice things about you, and maybe for other planners. I mean, I don't claim to bring tips to this podcast, but just one of the things that comes to my mind is, like, you're so direct. Like, you never have to wonder what Wendy is thinking.
No, it's great.
Like, is she stressed out about this, or is it like, do I need to hurry up? Like, you're going to come in a kind way, but you're going to say, look, we have to get this done. You have literally, like Otto said, you have 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
And we have to move on, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
That's really helpful for us to know. Like, we're not questioning, we're not guessing, like where we need to go next. What do we need to do?
Yeah.
You've made it clear.
But that's because she feels in total control the whole time.
Yeah.
And so when she says 5 more, you're not like, it's because she gave you 25 before she says 5 more. And so if you're doing your job, you're fine. You're totally fine. And she's right. And you have 4 more minutes now. So
I do. And if you really said I need more, it's not like I'm going to be like, no. I mean, I hope that we've discussed in advance the amount of time that you need.
Yes,
exactly.
And again, if you're professional and you know what you're doing, again, I have the good fortune of my career of working with people that it's not their first rodeo either at this point. Like, I am hiring photographers who have been doing this for a while. It goes smoothly because of that.
And I hear you saying it's okay for me to come to you and go, look, I don't have it in the can yet.
Yeah.
I need 5 more minutes, because you want me to say that, because you're going to deal with all the fallout of if it's not in the can, if you will.
I mean, I've never had a client say they didn't like James and Otto's photos. So when I have you guys on site, I am not worried about the product. At all. It's a great joy for me to get to be around you and work with you. And it's also, it's calming as an event producer to have the utmost in trust of your vendor. And I have 100% trust in the James and Otto show. So
Sure.
that makes it very easy
that.
for me. There is no concern at all. And there's always concern somewhere at a wedding.
Yeah, there is.
You know? And so if I can check my box of like, oh, I've got James and Anna, like I don't have to worry about anything. We work great together. We know each other, how we work. But I do on the flip side, you know, and this is indecisiveness is the downfall of all events.
Yeah.
And not every decision is the right decision, but a decision is the right decision.
Yeah.
You know, I'm the first one to say that I did something wrong. You know, shit, I blew that one. Oh, I should have.
Yeah. Onward.
Whatever. Or we got to manipulate something I made, you know, whatever it might be. But in the moment, just make a decision. You can, if you are an indecisive human being, you should not be a wedding producer.
Yeah. That's literally the skill they're hiring you for, right?
That is
that confidence
they are hiring you for.
Yeah.
Decisiveness, guidance, helping and choosing the best team for that client.
Yeah.
You know, I think, and being a decisive person kind of, it's either, I think either have it or you don't, but it also comes with experience. But like, you can't walk around on that day going like, I wonder if we should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No way. Like,
yeah.
You get 5 hours.
Rápido.
You spend a year and a half planning for 5 or 6 hours of a day.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to get in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I think for me, photography, I like fast, but I like fast in those moments.
Yeah.
Cause they want to dance.
It works for me. Fast works. I like it.